press go. Oh, all right, perfect. Hi, Brent. You're the first one that's popped up.
Of course, I've been waiting.
I know, I saw you in the waiting room. All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all well this evening. There's still some people coming in, so I'm just going to quickly wait for everyone to jump in. Here we go. All right. We've got obviously cameras off, mics off, whatever. If you want to be on camera, you most certainly can. It's completely up to you. Before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country in Australia and their connection to the lands. The Rootlings Network pays respects to elders past, present, and we extend our respect to all Indigenous people here today. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Dylan Grigg. Dylan, I think I messaged you on Instagram, maybe it was like 4 or 5 months ago, hoping to get you in for September. Because for those that don't know that are new to the happy hour, which I see a bunch of new faces in there, it's how do we spend time with industry icons? How do we ask the burning questions? So, Dylan, you were put forward by one of the Rootlings. Actually, he's in this room today, as
Oh,
somebody
okay.
that he would want to hang out with for an hour, listen, learn everything that he possibly could. So I'm so glad that we're here tonight. And as I said before, this is actually our largest happy hour, which is fantastic. So, greetings, everyone. And we'll be recording this as well. So for the people that can't make it to the chat tonight, you'll be able to watch it back or listen to it later. So, yeah, chat box is open. You can put your hand up if you have a question. Actually, I think I already see someone in the chat box. Oh, it's someone's note taker. Anyway, so yeah, those two options are available for you. There is no such thing as a dumb question, and there's more people coming in. I'm sorry. So yeah, let's get started. So, Dylan, let's take it back to when you first started in the wine industry. How did you get started? What was your first job? What did you do? All of that stuff.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me. And the most registrants, Viti for the win. So we have to make it interesting. I think you asked about four questions. What was it? How did I get into the wine industry? I grew up in the Barossa Valley. Um, so but I'm the first in my family that's worked properly 100% in the wine industry. Obviously, grandparents and people have had odd jobs picking or helping out other people, but I'm the first person to be fully committed and involved. And how did that happen? Well, I went to school in the Barossa, so I grew up with grapevines all around me, so that kind of got normalized for one thing, and that little OCD thing in your brain likes, some of those straight lines. Um, and I was never good at school. I didn't like school at all. I wanted to be at home working on my cars. I built my first car from pieces and registered it and drove it around when I was 16 and a half. I always liked working with my hands and being outside. So I didn't really enjoy school that much. But when I was in year 10, I think, they said, oh, you get that book, The Job, whatever it is, and you choose your jobs and then you choose your subjects. And I said, oh, I want to be an engineer. And the career counselor said, no. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you got the wrong maths. You got to be doing like maths one, two, and three, and you've got to also do physics and chem. And I was doing, tech studies and business maths, and I wouldn't say it was easy, but I wasn't doing subjects that were setting me up for a path to university. So I'm like, all right, what else do I enjoy? Food. So I then worked towards going to study commercial cookery straight out of year 12. So I started that, which was great. 3 certificates at TAFE, doing my apprenticeship. And at that time, in 1990 something or other, seven, the pay was crap and the hours were worse. So I quit. And in June, in the Barossa, what jobs do you get? Not many, but I got a job pruning. And that's how I got into the vines. It was just a means of employment. at that time.
That's an amazing story as well. And I don't think we've had anyone yet that has said that they've started with cookery and then moved into the vineyard. So got a job in the vineyard. Pruning's pretty hard. It's pretty brutal on your body. It's cold, it's early mornings. What kept you inspired to continue in the vineyard?
See, I really enjoyed it because I was outside and I was getting paid to be outside and have my hands dirty. So I remember when we used to have those pneumatic snips, like these days we use these electric secateurs, like zzz, and they've got this perfect gradation so you can really be detailed with your pruning. But we had this machine that would follow us down the row, had these metal bars, so it was self-steering and it had these hydraulic lines coming off of them. We had these air snips, and if you touched them, they would go and cut. So if your finger was there or the wire was there, like bang, straight through. You don't even get a second to go, oh my God. Anyway, this machine wouldn't start most mornings because it's, 3 degrees or something in the Barossa. And the other guys that stand around like, oh, sweet, don't have to do anything. And I'm like, nah, come on, let's just check the gap on the spark plug. Let's get the air cleaner off. Let's just get this thing started. And the boss saw me doing that as a bit of someone who was keen to work, that was keen to solve a problem, and then also with the pruning, reshaping the vines. God, the sins that we, the cuts that we used to make, and we used to carry around a saw. Like if you couldn't get through it with the snips, you just saw it straight off. We've learned a lot since then, but looking at the vine as a structure, and this is before I'd done any studies in viticulture, thinking about it like a machine, kind of got me interested. Like, oh, we're going to cut this and it's going to flow this way to grow that way. And my employers said, oh, do you want to do a traineeship? And I thought, what? I don't even know what a traineeship really is. They're like, well, we pay you, and for 2 days a month or whatever it is, you go to TAFE at Newry and you get certificates in viticulture. And I'm like, sweet, I get paid to go to TAFE this time. And it's funny because it was exactly the same TAFE that I went and did my commercial cookery at, like only, a year and a half before. So there was still lecturers and people that I knew. And they gave me the Sunlight into Wine, Viticulture 1 and 2, and that Phil Nicholas irrigation. I forget what it's called. It's on the bookshelf. Irrigation and nutrition, something like that. And I dove into these books and just read them like cover to cover. And I'm used to reading workshop manuals and books about building and fixing cars and things like that. And there was one page on, I don't know if it was ATP or the nitrogen cycle or cellular respiration or something anyway. And I just kind of spun out and went, oh, wow, this is like an input output system, like an engine. You put fuel in one end and it compresses air and exhaust comes out the other end. And my brain at the time simplified plants to that. And I really got enthused and I just worked really hard.
That sounds pretty cool. And as you said, those books and that foundation for somebody that just understood, I guess, the engineering of the vine, that's where you were able to, draw so many parallels together that really ignited your love. So
Hmm.
you've done your TAFE certifications. What happens then? Because obviously, as most people know, you are a doctor. So you've gone to TAFE. What happened between TAFE and getting your PhD? Probably a lot, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a lot, a lot. I guess the fast forward is the where I was first working, I was the only person at that vineyard. Um, so there was a relationship breakup basically, and I needed to find another job. And the consultant that we had at the time had just gone to set up some other big vineyards, and they were looking for a tractor operator. So we already had a relationship, and he was like, "Oh, Dill can drive a tractor," and so I went, and this was, mid to late 90s. Um, I went out to Greenock to this massive property that still was a cattle farm and got driven down to Crakers, the local tractor dealership, and they gave me a brand new tractor and a rotary hoe and a front end loader and said, you do as many hours as you want, just follow that bulldozer. And I just spent so long driving the tractor and, listening to music and working in the vineyard, I just loved it. And I would always ask questions from my boss. So I then moved to another position, which was looking after a little vineyard that actually had vines instead of a young one that was being planted. And we had a vineyard in the Adelaide Hills, and the guys didn't really want to go and work there that often, whereas I put my hand up because I'm like, wow, this is the challenge. Like, we have to spray twice as much. The windows for operations are a lot narrower. I just saw VSP as being a little bit more interesting compared to a sprawl. Um, and so at a young age, I forget how old I was, early 20s perhaps, I had a remote site, two tractors, a full-time employee. I was managing, well, maybe it was like 50 hectares, something like that. And I kept asking questions of my boss because we would work on the spray programs, for example. And I'd say, "Oh, how does this work?" Or, we're spraying a herbicide on the ground. I remember one time, and sometimes the leaves would go brown from the outside in, and sometimes they'd be yellow in the middle, and it would go from the inside out. And I'm asking, like, what's happening? Why is this going on? And he just said to me, Dylan, I think you need to go and learn some more because I can't answer these questions. And so then I was old enough to do mature age entry. So I studied my butt off and got a mature age entry into viticulture at Waite. And that's when I did my undergrad. And then if I skip right past a whole lot of opportunities and amazing things that happened to me in that period, I finished my degree earlier than most people that I'd worked there, that I was studying with because I'd been working. So for the industry experience, I got some credit for that. And I was also doing CSU subjects at the same time, overloading as I was doing the subjects at Waite. And I was working for a consultant, Di Davidson. So I was pretty busy and running hard at that uni thing. So I was the nerd at the front of the class, like, will that be an exam? Um, and so from there, I got out into industry and moved to New Zealand, lived on Waiheke Island, and worked over there for a while before coming back to Australia when I worked in the Yarra, started meristem. Um, First child was going to be born. That was like 8 years have passed now. And I'm consulting in the Yarra, Mornington, and Strathbogie, and moved back to Adelaide, searching for opportunities. And I'd always kept in touch with my lecturers. And I went and saw Cass and said, hey, I've got these opportunities in industry, but I still enjoy learning. When I'm at uni, I want to be out. And when I'm out of uni, I want to be in. So she said, oh, we've got this PhD. And I thought, well, let's have a crack at that. It's not, I didn't want to do a PhD that was going to make me an expert in some like minute detail of viticulture or like a single protein or something like that. So researching old vines was very difficult because it covered so many scientific disciplines, but hey, that's viticulture. You got to have your finger on the pulse on a whole lot of different sciences. And yeah, then again, I applied myself while consulting to undertake the PhD,
That's
and
amazing.
that was it.
Yeah, so easy, so easy, condense, a life's work, well, the sum of a life's work into 10 minutes almost. I guess going back to this curiosity that you've had, was that always innate within your personality, or is it something that you had to work hard to bring about?
It's always something that I've had. I think I was always it was a matter of just finding the right avenue for it. So I remember as a kid, like Lego, I just play Lego like for hours and hours, all day, all the time, building things, finding weaknesses in them, and then well, that's what you do. You build it, doesn't work, so you change it and you fix it. Um, so I guess from a mechanistic point of view, I was always solving those sorts of problems. And then when I was allowed out in the shed, I got straight into the tools, and I'd be fixing my own bike, or I'd be making a Franken bike out of bits and pieces of old other bikes. And my grandpa was a great inspiration. He was a bricklayer, and he would service, this was back when your cars, you open the bonnet, you could see a motor. Um, he would always service the cars, so there'd be a problem with Dad's Mini or the Corolla or whatever it was. Oh, no, that's just the master cylinder. And he would say, if someone put it together, I can take it apart. Machines put things together now, so it doesn't mean the same. But um, his kind of philosophy was, if it's broken, I can fix it, and I took that on. So my first go-kart would break, and I'd fix it. And for $100, we got this old Mini that was just sitting in the front yard out at Williston. It had been there for years and years, and kids had it as a cubby house, and Grandpa and I got it started, just by problem solving different bits and pieces. And I used to drive that around the backyard until I had, a cabinet full of workshop manuals for a Mini. And I'm like, well, I'm going to build my first car from scratch. And I did. So I think I always had that kind of, how does it work? And because I'm not um, super book smart, it didn't just click. I had to kind of think my way around things. And if you can understand it, you can explain it. And that's, I think, helped me in viticulture understand complex topics and then try and distill them down to explain them. Because if I can explain them to myself, I can hopefully explain them to other people.
Well, I think that's a really nice segue into the consulting part of your makeup and your career, because obviously we've got a lot of young people here that work within businesses that might not seem like consulting's in one of their goal sets. How did the consulting business come about? Was it kind of a natural thing? Was it something that you were like, oh, I'm going to branch out, I'm just going to go for it and figure out what's happening later?
I think you kind of suck it and see. It's like I'm still doing. Um, no, I got pushed into it. So I worked for Di Davidson, who was a well-known consultant um, in the 90s. And that gave me a little bit of a window into like that higher level consulting. And even when Wayne Stewart was consulting to us back, well, when he set up the Nepenthe, like this is a long, long time ago, this guy would come around and, have the nice full drive and the clean clothes, and he'd just have the answers. He's like, okay, you're going to do this, 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 this. You're going to put this through the irrigation at this time and that time. And I was like, that would be cool. So I think the seed was planted that it was an option. But in 2008, when I was working at Sticks, Mac Forbes, um, who I had met because he was renting a space at Sticks before he had his own winery. We got along really well. He sent me an email one time. I was driving the Slasher, and when a Nokia E71 or something with the keyboard. He's like, Dill, what's your last name? I'm like, what? My last name? I sent it to him, and then 5 minutes later, a contract comes through. He's like, hey, we'd like to offer you a job. And I'm like, wicked. And it was like 2 or 3 days a week. I'm like, mate, that's not a job. I need a job. That's like part-time employment. And he said, Dill, you should go consulting. And I said to him, I said, I'm not old enough. That's what old people do on the tail of their careers, or, when they've got a really big following. And he said, no, no, you're good with people. You can explain things. You'll be fine. So he kind of just pushed me into it. And I didn't know how it would work or where to start. There's no rule book. I'd worked under Di, and I'd seen other consultants come through the business, but the level of knowledge that they had when I was not even 30, it was a pretty overwhelming thing to think that you can walk into a business or walk into a vineyard and have solutions or strategies that people would find valuable. Um, and I remember the first client I got, I saw the guy out pruning and it was still bud bursts, and I kind of leaked over the fence, walked back and passed forth a few times. Um, and I'd been listening to Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, the Stephen Covey book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a good one. And I had a couple of chapters just on repeat to try and build the confidence to go and talk to this stranger, because I was a stranger too. I'm like, mate, what are you up to? He's like, oh, I'm just pruning. Oh, yeah. Do you need a hand? He's like, yeah, I'm going in for some sort of surgery and I'm not going to get it finished and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we're out pruning and you look over and see how he's pruning. You go, why are you leaving so many? And you start talking about what he's doing and what your impression of it is. And then he's like, you should come and have a cup of tea with the owners. So Then I go and see the owners, and they go, "Oh, you should come and see our other vineyard out the back. It's kind of toast. It's in a bit of trouble." So we go out there and have a look, and it's this Pinot MV6, and they've laid down so many buds, and the yield's dropping, so they're putting more buds down. And I'm like, "You guys, this is not how it works." So I kind of explained how it works, and that before I realized it, I was consulting. And then that's kind of how it started. I think you don't come, well, I didn't start it and have a full book and, full-time employment as a, you know, consultant. I was managing five individual vineyards at the time, and consulting was a part of that. So obviously, I was consulting to the vineyard, but then I was also driving the tractor, doing the spraying, getting the contractors in, or doing the pruning the work, whatever it was. Um, and it kind of evolved from that, and it was consistency in the success and I guess the visibility or how those vineyards looked and how you portray yourself in that little corner of the industry. And then someone talks to someone else and says, "Hey, we're down in Mornington and we're looking for someone um, that's good." And somehow, like the bloody holiday thing, your name gets thrown in the hat. And then these people ring you and you're like, "Oh, do I wear my new fancy shoes because I'll look smart, but then they're shiny and not scuffed up, so they'll think that I don't work outside? Do I wear my scuffed up shoes and then I think I look like a hobo?" Like you become your own worst enemy um, walking into some of these things. But I don't know how it happened. You just kind of got to back yourself and slowly but surely things come together.
I have to ask. So did you end up wearing the scuffed shoes or the shiny shoes?
I think I might have gone in the middle ground. I might have actually cleaned my scuffed shoes.
Excellent. And that's so important, right? Because it is everything. And I mean, like, you can drive past a vineyard and say that looks really good, but at the end of the day, they've got to, like the person, and you've got to be able to communicate effectively with the client. Because when, the shit hits the fan, you've got to make sure that you find a way out of that. When you kind of got into your consultancy, was that when you had kids, before you had kids? Did you think that that was helpful in navigating, being a new parent, or did you just kind of try and make it all work?
Like I said, I'm making it up as I go along. So I started that before I had kids. Eight, nine, 11, 12, 13. So I got 6 years under my belt before my son was born. So one piece of advice I give to young kids, younger people, um, is you got to run as hard as you can, because when you have kids, life gets a whole lot different. So I think my wife and I at the time, I don't even know how we did it. I don't even know how we communicated. I guess we used the phone, but we just get home whatever time we got home, or I'd get home for 10 minutes and yeah, I'm going out to a tasting, or yeah, going to work on a Saturday, or no, I've got to work all weekend, or you just make it happen. Um, so I've forgotten what the question was now, but we just worked really hard in those early years before kids. It's part of the question I remember.
Oh, sorry, I'll not ask four questions in one. But I guess, yeah, just about balancing, family life and a career, because it can be super challenging. And I know
Oh,
there's a bunch of people in the Zoom that have kids. Some people might be thinking about kids, and then some people are going to live their best lives and go to Europe every summer because they don't have kids. So I think
hey,
it's
we
really,
did it with kids.
how?
No, I
Those
think
kids are so
you got to
expensive.
find the balance. And my wife has been really supportive, which helps. I mean, that's obviously, your life partners, so we both support and help each other. But I think you just got to keep working. I got told years ago, it was, well, I say it about work. It's kind of the Glenn McGrath. You remember the fast bowler?
Yeah.
Like line and length. Just keep doing the same thing, line and length all day, and you'll get a wicket. So when it comes to working, if you've got the passion and you've got the interest, you keep reading broadly. which I do within the broad scope of viticulture and agriculture in general. And that just keeps the progress. So the days that you don't have anything on, or the days that you're with the kids or whatever, you've got, oh man, I've got papers and stuff all over the place. But it's that thirst for knowledge that keeps you going and keeps it fresh. And I remember Di Davidson telling me when it must have been early 90s when she was working really hard and she was she was almost a lone female. She was in a minority definitely up high in the wine industry years ago. And she said, I used to have to do all of these visits with my daughter in the back seat and pop the car door open and I thought her first words were going to be not another vineyard, mummy. You know, you do what you have to do, and the kids are along for the ride. So long as you're still looking after them, I think they actually give you some energy and give you some perspective, even though they're draining it from other areas.
And do you think any of your kids will go into the wine industry, or is it too early to say?
I have no idea. It's the same as mountain biking. Like I don't want to push them, um, and even with the school thing, I'm the prime example of getting let's get a career pathway at year 9. I did not enjoy school and I didn't have the motivation to do the subjects and the homework and the essays and this and that until it clicked and I found something that I was really interested in. And then I just spent all my lunch times and every hour in like the statistics drop-in center or the maths resource center or whatever, um, just trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
I would have that stuff. I mean, I did fall asleep a lot because I wasn't used to working with books, but um, that sort of stuff, I just didn't have the motivation to solve those problems. And then once I found viticulture or plants more broadly, that gave me the motivation to solve those problems. And now, you know, that oh, there's that classic diagram. If I could do the whiteboard thing, where you've got three triangles. There's a triangle like this, and there's a line across the middle, and then there's one in the middle, and the triangle goes below the line. And then on this side, there's a little bit of the triangle, and there's all this depth, like an iceberg, a little bit on the top, heaps below. When you're at the start of the career, it feels like all of your knowledge and everything is, it's out there. And then when you're partway through your career, you're a little bit more refined with your knowledge, but there's a lot more that's deeper, solidifying or foundation knowledge. And when you do a PhD, it's like this, like you got this line and you go to speak in the scientific world and you get slapped down because someone's already read that paper or they've been thinking about it for 40 years ahead of you. So you really have to double down on your knowledge and your reading, and you get to a point where you realize the more you know you don't know.
I'm really discovering it in this role as well, and just like traveling to a bunch of different regions, which
Mm,
I'll ask you about in a moment because, yeah, obviously the landscape of the Australian wine industry is so varied. And then you've got the international waters that can be quite crazy. And actually, I'm really
mhm.
interested in this question that Brent's going to ask. And you might have to send us through the list later. Maybe we'll have a monthly Rootlings book club. But Brent asked, do you have any high recommendations or must reads of books that you should start with?
Oh my God, people always ask me this. I should put no. If I ever get time to do my blog, to update that, I'll put on. Um, I say to people, it depends what you're interested in because wine and viticulture, you kind of it's niche, but you need like your micro niche. What is exciting or what is interesting? Like you can get into Robert White's what is it? Soils for Fine Wines. Like soil science. God, that can be so boring, but that's a great book. And it's got these little pop-out squares that break things down. Marcus Keller's viticulture book is really in depth and deep, but I think that's an awesome book. Oh, I've got my screen on. Viticulture 1 and 2, the old Coombe Dry, are great. Winkler's book from like the 70s or something. I don't know. There's so many. If you're coming at it, are you coming at it from a practical point of view, like that one you can buy through DPI now. It's a ring spiral bound thing. I forget the name of it. But there's some practical books, but then there's nerdy books, and then there's just like books that are really deep, like the biology of the grapevine. I think it's by Mullins. I mean, that thing costs $200, but it's so good to read. And I've got all of these books, and to be perfectly honest, they all come into their own at certain times of the season. So the Mullins book, I almost always dig that out before flowering. Oh yeah, what happens at flowering? And just read through it. And at the moment, I'll probably go over and read um, take a shallow slice across multiple texts to read about budburst. What actually is the biological cascade that kicks off budburst and acrothony and apical dominance and all of those sorts of things? And I find that you don't learn it all in one year. You learn it, you just keep layering it each year. So each time you go through a seasonal cycle, you go back to your old, I don't go back to my notes in particular, but you go back to things that you've read that were interesting, and you can read them again, and you'll always have, with another year of experience, you'll always have a different take home.
Amazing. We will get the list from you for sure. Hannah just asked a question. I refer to the Dry and Coombs books more often than I thought I would now that I'm working in the industry and finish uni. Never thought I'd read my textbooks for recreation.
Yes, exactly. And the resources one, like it's got practical stuff in it. Like I mean, yes, it's dated, but so is Winkler's General Viticulture. But the awesome part about it is you can read and have a look at how dated it is and go, right, that's where the knowledge was. And science is only as good as only good for the time it's published until some new science comes along. And it's the knowledge that's been built. And viticulture has been around since antiquity, but modern viticulture is pretty young, so you can see some of these early studies and early books. And now, I mean, you read the pruning books or read about clonal selection, and now have a think about how we prune and how much we think about pruning, and have a think about how much we all bag out the Merlot clones or the certain Pinot clones, or how we've got the crappy Tempranillo clones over here, and all of that is only just improving at the moment. So, being at the start or in the early days of your career, you're coming up with like all these different clones that didn't even exist. So you got to take a look at some of the old material and what they were working with, and then put that lens over what we've got and see where the opportunities might lie.
And that's like a fascinating, obviously, you've got books, and you learn a lot that way. And you've already spoken a lot about or I'm going to assume she's your mentor, Di. But what other kind of mentors have you had throughout the industry?
Uh, I guess I haven't had one. Oh no, I've had multiple mentors. I'm trying to think out loud here. I've had multiple mentors over the time. At the time, you don't often acknowledge or realize that that's what they are, like you're a mentee or whatever. It's just someone that you look up to that takes the time to teach you things. Um, and Di was amazing, but the time that I met Di I was second year uni, and in first year uni, um, at the prac session out in the vineyard at Wade, I walked up to Marty Longbottom and Peter Dry and I said, "Hey, I want a job in the lab." And they're like, "We don't have any jobs in the lab. You can't just walk up and ask for a job." Um, and it was only a few weeks later that Marty's like, "Hey, I've got all of these flowers. You want to count anthers? You want to count flower caps and berries from bunches of Cabernet that are frozen in the freezer?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Sign me up." And I did that in the lab with Peter Dry next door through the glass window. So as I was studying, he was my lecturer, but for only one subject at that point. I'd knock on the window, "Hey, Peter, you got a minute?" And we'd sit down and talk about viticulture stuff. And I didn't realize at the time he was my lecturer, but that was for 2 years, 2.5 years or something like that. And then I moved to New Zealand. And then when I came back to do the PhD, Peter agreed to have me to be a supervisor, even though I was retired, which was awesome. Um, and we spent all of that time talking, and it was a bit more of a professional relationship. But I'd always looked up to him since getting those Kerman dry books back in the 90s. And then when I moved to Spain and then came back, I took a postdoc position at the uni, and that's when Peter was working with the AWRI. But I looked him up, and turns out that he lives around the corner from me. So then he would call up, "Hey Dylan, you want a coffee?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right." I have to brew it, of course. But he'll come round and have a coffee, and you're like, "Oh, far out." It's just like slowly over time, you know, the Peter Dry, OAM, has become a mentor. That's over a long period. Di was a great mentor for a period. Before that, I had, or I guess Wayne Stewart was. Um, I've had I've had quite a few, and I've even I don't. I mean, well, it's embarrassing anyway. But I was, who was I talking to? Maybe it was Rob Dolan or something, and I said, "Oh, I just need someone ahead of me that I can learn from." And I said the M word, mentor. I just need a mentor. And he goes, "Dylan, maybe you're the mentor now." I'm like, "What? No, that's for old people." And then, so when he said that, I was on my own for a little bit. But um, yeah, if you got an employer or someone you look up to, just drop them a random email. I've dropped random emails to people in the US, um, in Europe, all over the place. Hey, I really like what you're doing. It's really interesting. Be awesome to work together one day. And you never know.
And actually, I think that probably answered Hannah's question in the chat box. But have you found they come organically, or have you sought out specific people? If you sought them out, how did you do so?
Yeah, that's another piece of advice that I give people, and I've done I've done quite a bit of maybe intense career counselling for a small number of people. Um, and it's probably a Stephen Covey thing, but with people, what is it? Fast is slow, and slow is fast. So seeking out to be a mentor, the same as when people have emailed me, I'm like, yep, sure, I'm really busy, but hang in there. Just keep shooting me a message every now and then. The diary is like this nebulous thing with so many clients all over the world that my time just kind of falls into place. Um, and people that have been able to handle that and haven't pushed, I've ended up spending quite a lot of time with. And I think the guys, one of them actually, I emailed, when was that? Maybe it was early, very early in COVID when I came back from Europe, or maybe it was I was in Europe. It was doing some inspirational stuff, and I was like, "Hey man, you're doing some really inspirational stuff. I'd love to meet you one day, and who knows, maybe we could work together somehow." And I left it. I just sent that thing away. Yeah, cool, thanks. That was it. And now it's 2025, 2024. They get in touch and they're like, "Hey Dylan, they obviously knew me from way back then. Heard about you from a few other people. I know you sent me an email a while ago. Can we talk?" And then you end up getting a client. And that's Raj Par. He knows quite a few people in the industry.
That's quite amazing to hear. So it's again that consistency. So I guess what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like when you show up authentically and do your best work and are curious and not only seek out opportunities, but be okay if opportunities don't come your way, that it all kind of ends up all right. It's like you've almost got to take your ego out of it if you don't get it in the first go. You just kind of keep doing your own thing really authentically and it all works out. Is that
Like
what?
those grapevines behind me, you push them too hard one year, you might not go the way you want, but you've got to go with the seasons, with the environment, and with the relationships and with people. I find it's kind of like that. The relationships that you want, they just they just don't happen. the rock star collab that you think you're going to get. It just doesn't eventuate. Um, but other things come up. So I don't know. I recognize a few names, but it's like on the Instagram, people have messaged me for years, and I try like 99%. I'll message back, and it's just like it's kind of paying it forward, that philosophy of abundance. I know what it feels like to be in the room and be like, these guys are heavy hitters and think that imposter syndrome. But at the same time, you don't realize the knowledge you've got. And when you're putting it out there or with your relationships, I think um, there's enough to share. And if you keep putting positivity out there and trying to be consistent, I don't know, you just at the moment anyway, you find your way. I'm not, maybe I'll
Actually,
get beached one day.
I'm going to ask you about obviously your own vineyard in a second, but I thought it was actually quite interesting. You talked about the Instagram piece because
Hmm.
obviously, you're quite active on Instagram, you have quite a great following, and I work in marketing and branding, right? So I'm all about that communication piece. Do you think it's really important when establishing your own kind of career and your own identity within the wine industry that if Instagram is something that you enjoy and social media is something you enjoy, should you really tap into that to create your own personal brand?
Think so, yes, but it's pretty fraught. Like it's a tricky place and it's a drug and it rewards things that aren't that genuine. So, um, I don't know, in terms of the metrics and all of that stuff, I was on a podcast last week in London and they're like, oh, you do really well. And what's the post that's got the most reach? And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like,
It.
occasionally I'll open those things and then I'll be like, oh, I, what are you going to do? You're going to structure your whole week around this? No, I just try and put things out there, which my wife sometimes is like, you're giving away, that could be work. I'm like, oh, it'll come back. But I do think that it's a good way just to put yourself out there and what you're interested in. You don't have to put your whole self out there. I mean, I was on Twitter in 2007, or 2007, 8, something like, oh, really early days. I forget now. Um, and that was great then. It was a positive community, and you just got sent people that were in the wine industry and driving tractors and what have you. And then I got put onto Instagram, and that was an opportunity to use pictures and words, but I also took my family more out of it. So I had to make that conscious decision. And you can scroll back through my hundreds of posts, and they probably ebb and flow. Um, but I just am amazed with the beauty of nature and the beauty in vineyards, vines, and with viticulture. And if we can try and share some of that without the glossy bullshit, I think that's a good thing because people that drink wine should know more about the hard work that goes on to grow it instead of glossing over it. So I think whatever your interest is, if it's unicorn bottles or traveling or whatever, um, your social profile probably follows you for a long, long time. So, um, yeah, if that's what you're going to do, go for it, put it out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it'd probably be really interesting, and maybe we'll chat about this later, like as a group. But obviously, a lot of people have really resonated with your work on Instagram, and that has brought you, into a lot of people's spheres. So then they're able to understand and grow. So I think maybe for the younger generation, and you guys can tell me in the chat and whatnot, it's been a really powerful and positive place to learn something from your Instagram. So yeah, it's great. And I really don't know much about viticulture, but I find it really fascinating to learn from your Instagram.
I
So
wish I could do more. I just
yeah,
don't have the time to do it. So it's, it's something that I enjoy doing, but it's also a bit of a mental health barometer. If I'm not posting things, it's because I'm not. I just don't want to put it out there. We all have days like this, and then when I'm feeling good, I'll be bam, 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 like because you've just got that bit of extra energy. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've got relationships all over the globe from that. So I don't know if no, people still message me, and you still message people, and if you see something that's inspiring. Um, Ask a positive question because there's positivity in the background, even if people don't put it on the front page. Um, and if people are doing something that's interesting, um, you know, give them a shout out or ask a question because I find often people are pretty genuine and they like the fact that a human has reached out instead of some bot.
Yeah, for sure. Brent's just said at work they always have a big chat at lunch whenever there's a post or story. Um, Now I want to talk, you talk about positivity and passion. Let's talk about your Instagram, Dylan, is what helped me find this group. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. I like that. Thanks, Hannah. Um, let's talk about your own vineyard, what the work you're doing in that, how that started. Let's dive into
Look at
all.
that.
Oh, Brent, you have to send something.
The cork's a bit cooked though. I reckon I need a refund on it. So
All right, tell me how much is left.
yeah, less than half.
Yeah, so what was the question?
Let's talk about your vineyard,
Mm.
your
Where
passion
from
project.
what angle?
I don't know. Tell us about it. Talk to me like, I don't know. Well, unless somebody else has a specific question,
All
but like,
right. Well, no, I can tell you the first thing my wife said when I said, "Hey, there's a great vineyard. I think we should buy." She said, "Deal, you told me you'd never buy a vineyard," and it goes to show how you really don't know. It wasn't in our, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan. It wasn't in our plan to own a vineyard, but that's also part of opportunities when they arise. So I met a couple that bought this vineyard when I was in Spain. They asked me to start consulting. I did. Moved back to Australia around COVID. Had a look at the vineyard in person for the first time. And was like, "Whoa, this place is awesome." And then not that long after it, 21. So I came back end of 19. Um, they said, "Hey, your government's making it very difficult for us to do business, and we can't come to the country, and we've been away for a few vintages, and we need some liquidity, and we forced to sell the vineyard." It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to lose an awesome vineyard, an awesome client. What do I do? And my dad was out at the time, and on the way home, I was driving back, and I ring, Gareth Belton was the first phone call, or I don't know if it was him or Mac. Anyway, I called Gareth and I called Mac, and I was like, "Oh, you know that vineyard in the Barossa?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah." And I said they're going to sell it, and both of them were like, "Oh, you got to buy it, deal." Like, don't listen to winemakers is maybe one of the rules. But I listed all of the reasons, all of the attributes, because I'm a very visual person, and being a bit mechanistic in my thinking, I'm like, okay, well, they're old vines. I've just done a PhD in old vine viticulture. They're Grenache. They're really good with their water, and they're planted on a wide spacing, and they're old, and they're in a soil type that'll accept water readily but won't let it disappear, like a self-mulching sand sort of thing. Um, and there's no posts, there's no irrigation, there's no nets. There's none of this VSP business that takes up all the time with all of the lifting and this, that, and the other and the trimming. It's 15 minutes from where I grew up in Lindock, and it's on exactly the same soil. There's three pockets of this sand over clay in Lindock or Sandy Creek, where it's too hot and too dry, Altona, and then Vine Vale. And it's the same smells, the same feel as the seasons turn, the weeds and what grows when you dig. It all feels the same as when I was growing up as a kid digging in the backyard. Um, so with all of these, with these boxes checked, it was like, oh, It's also an avenue for me to have my own experimental plot to play with viticulture. And maybe it can be a good avenue to share the connection between viticulture and wine, because let's be honest, there's a massive gulf that's filled with marketing. Um, and yeah, so we did it. And day one, you realize, Jesus, you're never going to pay the bills selling fruit. So um, that's where the wine label came in. It was like part of the picture to go like, let's make some wine and use the experience I had working with old vine Garnacha in Spain and traveling widely in Europe, and combine that with where I've been working for the last 20 years, which is like Yarra Valley, Mornington. Um, Lots of clients I have are still in the Adelaide Hills, Piccadilly. So I'm always working with Pinot, and I don't like drinking like heavy blown out reds. So I'm like, right, we've got this fine soil. We've got these old vines, which are low-ish yielding. And I've seen how people handle Grenache, the vines for one, but also how they handle the fruit in the winery, to get really great side expression without weight in Europe. So let's do it here. Then I had to make up a recipe of how we're going to make the wine, and that's the wine that Brent's enjoying now.
That's pretty cool. What a great story. I'm
Mm.
just very conscious of time. There's so many more questions to ask you, and man, this webinar could go for like another hour and a half, but I don't think that's in your
Come on,
calendar.
team. Who's going to ask me a question?
Hannah, go for it.
You don't need to put your camera on either. You could just
Oh no, I was eating my dinner, so I was like, I'll save you all the
oh,
having to watch me eat my dinner. So, um, I'm particularly interested in the work that you're doing because we've just planted some bushvine Grenache in 2023, and I do remember I'm one of those people that have scrolled back through your Instagram page, but I do recall a video where someone had asked you around sort of training the bushvine Grenache up. And there seems to be this thing at work where everyone's like, no, like we've just got to do it. We just got to do it. And so I think you've said in this video, you wouldn't use laterals as your spurs. You'd be what? Yeah.
wow, you
That's
have
what
found that. That's a
yeah, I
deep
think it
cut.
was like I think that was like started last month or something. But anyway,
Oh,
so
that one. Yeah, okay.
yeah, it was that one. But I was just wondering because there's a few things that I was like, oh, but I've only been in the vineyard for about 14 months. So
Mm.
I'm asking lots of questions and everyone's like, no, like we just got to do it. You just got to get on with it. You just got to get on with it. And I'm like, oh, but we probably don't want to rush this. Like they're only, 3-year-old vines. Like, shouldn't we be going slow because that's going to set it up? So
Mhm.
just on bushvine Grenache, obviously laterals probably aren't the best options for your spurs. I think was
Mhm.
what I picked up from that video. Is that correct?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep, perfect. What would be the top 5 things?
Only
Like,
five.
well, I mean, I don't want to take up all night and other people probably have questions, but if you could give like 5 quick tips around establishing bushvine Grenache and the things to consider and think about, what would
Yep.
they be?
Don't overwater it.
Okay.
Um, because they will grow a shoot fatter than my arm. Like they
Yep,
will
some of them are fatter than my
exactly.
thumb. Yeah.
Which will lead to point number five. So don't overwater them. Make sure they're secured to some sort of tutor or pole, like from day one, so that you've got straight trunks. I wouldn't use square wood again because it cuts into the trunk, and I don't know what region you're in, but with movement,
Yeah.
it can damage the trunk. So rebar or something works really well, and then it can be a little bit taller. Also, be sure to choose your branching height where you're going to branch early.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
start don't start low to the ground
Hmm.
unless I don't know how you're going to manage under vine, but make sure you commit on a branching point, and that's where you're going to take all of your buds to go left and right. And
Yep.
then what are we up to for? Don't. Um, when they're young, I use training hoops. Maybe there's a video on that
Okay.
as well, because they just want to sprawl out a little bit. And because the
Mm,
shoots are long, because there's no fruit, they'll lean over. Whereas the training
mm.
hoops pull them in so the buds are pointing up. So you don't have to make inversions with your cuts. You can have an outside bud to take that flow up to set up your structure. And the last
Yep.
thing is don't be afraid of trimming them. Like
Yep.
get them up and then trim the tops because they will likely
Mm.
flop until there's fruit to act as a handbrake because they are vegetative demons without fruit on them.
Yeah, that's what we sort of found like last year. Some
They'll
of them that
self-mutilate.
were
They'll blow up and then the arm will just fall off. And I've got some
that's what's
ugly.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've just broken. We were using just the round plastic stakes with the metal reinforcement inside them and just taping them.
Mm.
And some of them got so big and they're so thick and heavy that they've all just fallen over. They've ripped the guard.
Yep.
Um,
Too much
and
water, too much fertilizer.
yeah, probably there's no fertilizer going in, but they have been overwatered. So
Then too much.
that
Then
is
too much water.
Yep. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I will take that back to my boss tomorrow. I'm in the Heathcote region, by the way, so
Oh, okay.
it gets
Yeah.
very windy. It gets very windy where this vineyard is. So
Yeah, which is
thank
why
you.
you've got to grow them up. And
Mm,
the ones behind me have all got square tops because they're all trimmed. Um,
okay.
in Rioja Alta, like up in the mountains, that's where they trim. I mean, the old timers they trim it flowering, which it's
Okay.
just when you do it, it's actually and it helps with flowering because of that hormone imbalance, the seed
Mm,
source, relationship.
yeah.
I don't like to trim it flowering because you can get too many laterals, but in a windy place, like hedged bush vines is actually a
Hmm.
thing
Okay. Good to
until
know.
you
I'll do
can
a bit of
grow the
reading on that.
shoots. Yeah, until you can grow the shoots to your desired length, which is probably like 60 centimeters or something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all really good to know because we've just started pruning them and I know that they are using the laterals and they're kind of just brushing. So some of
Slow
that stuff's
is
probably not considered.
yeah,
Yeah.
slow is fast.
Yeah. That's
The
great. Thank you.
Yeah, if there's heaps of vigor, like, and you actually need to leave extra holes in the pipe so that it just does so it grows somewhere. Sometimes you have to use a lateral or two, but make sure if you
Mm,
do that it's balanced.
yeah.
But it's not that great for structure because of the
Mm,
phyllotaxy of the buds that are coming out of the proleptic and stilleptic shoots. It's different.
yep. That's what I said. Thank you. Thank you for validating what I thought. Appreciate it.
There you
We
go.
have recorded this session, so you can
Oh,
play that back at tea break. Maybe just take out a couple things. I just have a quick question from Dan. If you could own a vineyard anywhere in the world and there was no constraint on cost or logistics, and it just happened, where would it be and why? Would it be the DRC vineyards? No, I'm just kidding. It could be anything.
probably wouldn't be actually. There's too many neighbours. Um, Oh, people ask me this one. It's so hard to say. It'd be in the God's own country, the Barossa Valley. No, I have to say that. You know what? It's I love the Mediterranean and the lifestyle. It's got to take pieces of everything. Take some inspiration from the Mediterranean. So, a beachside vineyard anywhere in there, whether it's, in Italy or Spain, I'd say Spain. But Trentino, like the Alto, the Adige, like up there, like those valleys are just so beautiful and amazing, but it'd be way too much, like 16 sprays a year in a conventional vineyard, so I wouldn't go there. I reckon the Mediterranean. Once you get through June, like there's no water, you've shoot thinned, the crop is the crop. You just go to the beach and drink rosé.
Isn't that what we all really want, realistically? Amber had a question about how do you approach managing and maintaining your relationships with clients across Australia and then Europe and overseas? Are there specific things you found unique to working with clients in different countries?
Um, I think you need to approach with respect, especially it's what do I say? Um, be open and say like if you haven't been there, you just say I can only talk about I can only talk about the things that I understand, and you can have to list your assumptions and say, is this correct? And you got to work with people, not be a dictator on, I know everything and this is how you're going to do it. So you lean on your experience, but you also use their experience so they kind of buy into the relationship as well, because it's a team effort. Consulting and saying this is how you're going to do it, it just doesn't, well, I don't do it, so I don't know how it works out, but it probably isn't great. Um, so that's one thing overseas, and also trying to keep on top of what the weather's doing. So if you're going to catch up for a chat, like, I mean, we've got the internet. Like, have a look at what the weather was for the last month. How's the growing season been? And try and do a little bit of background without becoming an MW on their sub-region. Um, and when it comes to in Australia, I don't know. I think it's having an interest. I mean, 2 years ago, I had 11, was it 11 regions in Australia that I had on my phone to monitor the weather. So bud burst, frost, flowering, fruit set, all of these things, and summer storms. Um, so trying to respect the fact that whoever you're talking to, they know more about their environmental conditions than you ever will, because they're there getting wet in the rain and blown by the wind. But just trying to be helpful without being a know-it-all, I think, if that kind of answered the question. So um, yeah, I don't know. Specific things are probably that. Do a little bit of research so you don't look too dumb. If that,
We've
you
got
know what, you
enough.
know what I mean. Like have a look around, see who the neighbors are, have a look at what the regions are known for, and um, yeah, you might have. I mean, I going to Spain to work with a business that's been growing grapes for hundreds of years. Man, that's overwhelming. And then being an Australian to go in there and say, you're going to stop cultivating and you're going to grow cover crops. Like you can't come in and go, that's treat it like that. You've got to say, hey, whoa, we just had a rainstorm and all your soil's down there. You know why? Um, you know, it's the Stephen Covey. It's seek first to understand, figure out their point of view or their viewpoint, and that gives you more power or more knowledge to actually approach them um, with some sort of middle ground and respect.
And I think that's not just only for consulting, right? If you're trying, like, if you're like Hannah, trying to get your point across for how they're, training their bush finds in the business, there are certain ways to do that with leadership or people that you need to get on your side. So I think that's a really good life lesson just in navigating tricky and complex challenges and how we as young people or can navigate that one. William also had a question. What challenges or new perspectives did you gain from managing your own vineyards after consulting for other people's vineyards for some time?
How much things cost? I mean, I work with awesome producers here all over the globe, and it's like, yep, we're gonna do this, bang, team's in, job's done, and it's done to like the best level. I have 1 to 2 days a week maximum. I haven't finished pruning. On Thursday and Friday, I've got to finish pruning. Um, you you don't have, I mean, I'm just a lone ranger, so I don't have a huge pool of resources I can draw from just to get things done. Um, I think that's probably a perspective which has been beneficial coming into this period where cash is kind of tightening up for wine businesses. Like it's great that people are still putting out or still using predominantly organic programs, or people are still putting out compost, even though the ROI on it's got a long tail. It takes a while to get that investment back, but we can see and understand that it's positive. Um, it's been it's a challenge to find the time, and also it's a challenge to let other people do things because no one does it like I do it.
We had Liz Riley 2 months ago, and she said you
Mhm.
can't be in the green if you're in the red. And that was a really valuable lesson about sustainability and making sure, that the costs are there and trying to mitigate, you know,
That's
how,
what they say about organics.
yeah, really, really. Now I do realize we have run over time. We haven't even touched on the amazing awards that you recently received, which
Oh, I don't
include
have to go anywhere. You've got the pro version of Zoom. I'd get cut off by now.
yeah, the budget pays for the pro version. So
I use it as a meeting. I use it as a meeting bookend.
yeah, it's pretty good. Like the 45 minutes, you're like, oh, got to get out of here.
All right.
Did you want to have the quickest chat? Because obviously you've just recently been awarded two amazing awards, which obviously was the 2026 Viticulturalist of the Year and also the Mick Williams Award for excellence. And I don't think I got that title 100% correct.
That's fine.
But they're pretty massive awards to win. Like, how did that feel? Yeah, how did it feel?
I think I'm still processing it. Like the the Excellence in Action Award. I I knew what that was. I mean, we all know what the Morris O'Shea is, and I'd never been to one of those fancy dinners. They're pretty expensive to go. And I'm like, yeah, I'll accept it. That's great. And talk to the guys before, and then I went there, and you look around the room, and it's like, holy crap, it's all the heavy hitters, it's all the mentors. Um, and I thought they were going to be giving out, award for the best cork and the best screw cap and all this other stuff. But no, it was Andrew Cayard's Maurice O'Shea and my award the whole night. So that was the great part about that is there was so many people that came up and said, Dylan, that's great. That's really well deserved. Well done. And a lot of those people in the audience at the time I've worked with, alongside, or know of, or had some crossover dealing with. So it made me actually, whilst I was completely overwhelmed, it made me really feel comfortable in the industry in that there were lots of genuine people there that were happy for me and that were supportive. Even if they're not coming around for a coffee, um, they've still got your back. So that was good there, and to get it alongside Andrew Cayard for his the arc and all of his history and research was awesome. So yeah, that one was pretty big, and then going to the tech show or the conference, the next day was like, you know, I had to leave early because everyone was saying, "Oh, well done," and that's when I really realized how many eyes were on that, which I didn't, I guess, because I just do my own thing for myself. I didn't realize the gravity of it, but that was really cool. And then the Halliday one, I thought that was just that was a different, it's kind of a different audience, and it's voted in a different way, the way that it gets narrowed down from a shortlist. Whereas the McWilliams Award, they didn't. All of that happens behind closed doors. You just get told, "Hey, you got this thing." Whereas the Halliday one, there's a bit more marketing, so it's like, here are our shortlist, and then 2 months later, here's the awards night. Um, but when they called to say, "Hey, you've been awarded," I was like, "Oh, shit, that's awesome, cool," and I was really happy. But even now, I'm like, I don't actually know what it means, and I'm not that great at marketing to go, let's, stand on the soapbox and leverage it really hard. I think hopefully it just puts a light on, or gives me more opportunity to shine a light on viticulture and shows that someone who's kind of just been plugging away the whole time um, can get recognition, which I think is kind of cool. Where to from here? I don't know. I'll just keep doing my thing.
Is there any more awards you could possibly win this year? I don't know. Is this it? Have you won all the awards?
Oh, I shouldn't have my background on my bookshelf over there. If you'd know, you'd see it's yellow and green, like all the ASVO books, journals. The ASVO, perhaps?
All right, let's go for the trifecta. Let's
Yeah,
do
no, I
it.
don't know.
We'll be there. Well, no matter what happens, I think you'll have all of us Rootlings there cheering you on. Now, any last minute questions from anyone in the audience? I'm sure that everyone will think of questions and your
When
DMs
they get
go
off.
later. Oh, okay. We've got why Palomino?
You mean for the rows just over here?
I
I
don't know.
guess. Um, because I want to make I want to make a clarete, which is like a blend of red and white, which they do in Spain in the Ribera del Duero. Like they use, what do they use? Macabeo, they call it Viura, Macabeo and Tempranillo and Grenache. And I couldn't get Macabeo, and I knew of an old vineyard up in Eden Valley, the Stone Garden Vineyard. It's an 1800s vineyard. I did an ampelography up there for the owner, and there was a mixed block of whites, and I found stacks of different varieties in there. There was some dispute over my ampelography and what the variety was, so we got DNA done, and it turned out that well, I was right. But there was Palomino, and there was Sauv Blanc, and there was Trincadera, and there was like all this other stuff. Caño I didn't get wrong because I didn't guess it. But there were these two Spanish white varieties which grow massive bunches, low acid, and they're kind of a filler. So it fits the Spanish story. They're pretty good with their water for the level of production that they can sustain. You've got the opportunity to make a white wine. Vine Vale on its sand with the katabatic winds from Eden Valley is cooler. I mean, it's still bloody hot, but it's cooler than other parts of the Barossa. So if I want to make an electric white, I can, or I can make clarete, and I get to use this this genetic material that's been DNA proven to be true and correct to variety that probably came out early 1800s, where I know Willie Perez and the work they're doing over in Jerez now, to try and get more of these clones back over to Spain, because when phylloxera came through, they planted clonally and they've lost a lot of their history. So it was a chance for me to be a bit of a nerd, maybe make a white, definitely make a really structured rosé, and be the first braided cordon trained vineyard in Australia.
Dylan, thank you so much for the depth of knowledge that you've shared with us today. And also about, that curiosity piece, I think just keeps coming back to me. It's like be curious, ask questions, turn up, and all of that. So I think, there's not just lessons in viticulture here that we've all learned today, but there's lessons in leadership, and there's lessons also on how to progress your career in a really authentic way that's not, climbing up the ladder. It's not climbing over people to get where you are. It's about doing it, yeah, really authentically and in a really real and engaging way. So thank you so much for your time tonight. It's been an absolute joy to have you on, and I'm sure that, yeah, everyone will echo the same thing. For our Rootlings in the room, obviously this happens once a month, and next month we have the iconic Sarah Crowe from Yarra Yering who will be joining us. And actually, she started in horticulture, funnily enough, and then worked her way up into winemaking and is now obviously winemaker and GM at Yarra Yering. So that's pretty fascinating. But Dylan, thank you so
You never
much.
know. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thanks
exactly,
for and
exactly.
maybe I'll meet some of you in person at some stage somewhere.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dylan. Bye.
Cool.
Thanks,
See
Dylan.
ya.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Oh, stop recording.